Are you miserable in your career? If the answer is yes, a career change might be worth exploring. But if the answer is no, that doesn't automatically mean that you should stay exactly where you are. One of the biggest mistakes that professionals make is treating career changes as something that should only happen when a situation becomes unbearable. In reality, many career changes happen because someone sees an opportunity to build new skills, create more flexibility, increase income, always a positive, improve quality of life, or move toward work that just fits who they are better. The challenge is figuring out whether you're considering a career change because you're moving toward something more meaningful or because you're trying to escape something uncomfortable. Today, we're going to talk about how to evaluate career changes more strategically, how to identify what experience comes with you, transferable skills, and how to decide whether a different direction strengthens your career position or possibly creates unnecessary risk. Let's get into it. Welcome to Control Your Career. I'm Julia Toothacre, your strategic career consultant, and I'm so glad that you're here. This season, we are talking about career leverage, how you can expand your opportunities, your influence, and options without feeling like you have to start over every time you want something different in your career. This is the last episode of this season, and we have talked about lateral career moves and how expanding your experience can strengthen your position over time. We've talked about market conditions. We've talked about so many different things. And today we're going to take this conversation just one step further. We're going to talk about those bigger career changes, how we can look at them a little more strategically, the experiences that are going to go with you. And then we're going to figure out if the new direction is going to be a positive for you or if it's going to create that risk. I know that's something that keeps people from making a lot of changes. So we are going to talk about it. The first thing we need to understand about career change is not every career change is starting over. And I would argue that even if you make I blew up my career change, you are still bringing experience with you. So don't feel like everything is going to be completely starting over. One of the biggest misconceptions about career change is that it requires just completely abandoning everything that you have already built in your career, whether that's 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years, you're always going to bring something to the table. You have skills that are going to come with you. I think especially those soft skills that we talk so much about. You have different relationships that are going to transfer as well. I think even if you switch completely, there are people who are a champion for you. And there are people who like to be connected across industries that are going to stick with you. Your industry knowledge, even if you go into a different industry completely, the knowledge that you had is going to come with you, and having a different perspective from one industry to another is also really helpful. Even different types of organizations as well. I know nonprofit to corporate, there's a lot, and the other way, there's a lot of information that transfers. And then leadership experience. I think not you having leadership experience, but experiencing other leaders is something that's always going to go back and forth with you depending on what you do within your career. And then I think depending on how big the change is, there's a certain level of credibility that's also going to follow. And sometimes that credibility is because you did something different. I think sometimes people value that you have been in this completely different space and they like that you're coming into their space and looking at it with fresh eyes. Not everybody likes that. Not everybody appreciates it, but there are some people who do. So some examples of different career paths where you're not completely starting over would be something like you're a teacher And then so you're in education and you go into corporate training. Very similar skill set, very similar, just different information in different places. If you are a recruiter and you go into sales, lots of transferable skills there, especially depending on the type of recruiter. If you're more of a hunter, then that is definitely going to transfer over into sales. And then one that I see very, very often with my clients, and I think this is just the nature of a lot of my clients, but operations to project management and project management to operations. I see so many people go back and forth between those two because the skill set is so incredibly similar. We just have to make some tweaks here and there. So, one of the questions I want you to ask yourself, if you were to make a change, because I'm assuming you're listening or watching this because you want to make a change of some kind, what is holding you back from that? So, what do you think that you might lose going from one industry or function to another? And what are you going to keep? What is going to transfer over? So there are a lot of different ways to make a career change. And I think this is really helpful right now because we have a lot of people who are considering career changes because certain industries are a little rocky right now. And I want to go over a couple of different ways that you can do a career change that I think will help you organize it in your brain a little bit better. So there's 4 types of career changes that I have seen. The first is a functional change. So this is changing what you do on a day-to-day basis. So this is a fairly big change, but depending on the type of work that you've done, it might not be as big of a change as you think, because some functional changes, it's not as big because maybe you're in a smaller organization or you've had to do some of these things and you prefer them. So you're making the switch over and you can do that within your organization. But for some of you, this is going to be a bigger change. So what does that mean? A functional change. So this is what you do on a day-to-day basis. So if you're in human resources and you switch over to sales, very different. If you're in marketing and you go into customer service, very different skill set. There are things that transfer over, but totally different fields of work. And then I would argue operations into product. I think there's more transferable skills there, but still you're really switching how you work on a day-to-day basis. Then we have industry changes. I actually think this is one of the most common, and this is what I recommend for a lot of my clients who want to move laterally and are tired of their industry. So this is keeping your same position type and you're switching the environment. You're switching where you do the work. So this could be that you worked in healthcare and now you're going to work in technology, or you were in government and you're going to go into finance. You were in higher education or education and you go into corporate. One of the most common I see, you're a nonprofit and you go into corporate or the private sector or vice versa. That's very, very common. The biggest barrier there is pay. Then we have structural changes. This is becoming more of a consideration, but it's been really hard the last number of years because of return to office mandates. But structural changes means you're doing the same work, sometimes with the same company, but not always. But you're changing how you work. So this would be going from an employee status, so a W-2, benefited position, to a consultant, because maybe you want some more flexibility. Or it could be that there was a downsize and they hired you back on in a consulting capacity, which sounds not smart, but does happen. I think sometimes people want more flexibility, but they want to keep working for their organization. So they'll work out things like that, different situations like that. You go from working as a corporate professional working for somebody else to being a business owner. Has become very common in the last couple of years, and I actually think is going to be really common with Gen Z. I don't know for sure, but this is what I am starting to see happen with that generation. I think they're going to want to own their own businesses. And then going from a full-time employee, full-time benefited position to a portfolio career. This is a little bit more unique. I'm not going to go into all the nuances of that, but this is essentially going from I work for one company, doing one thing, getting paid by them, to possibly working for multiple companies. You can be on payroll for a company. So it's like you work part-time, but you might work for a couple of different people. Little bit different than consulting. So consulting is you're going in and you're solving a problem. Portfolio is more you're coming in and doing something specific for them. I would look at it more as temporary work and you move around, but a lot less stability if you go that route. And then we have a complete career change. We are changing everything. We are changing where we work, how we work, the industry, the function. We are changing all the things. Still going to have some transferable skills, but not as many. Very much we are starting over. Some examples of that would be you're a teacher, you're in education, and you become a software developer. So different. You are an accountant and you want to become a therapist. Very different skill set. You're a marketing manager and you want to become a nurse. Totally different skill set, different environments, different fields. Everything is different. When you do a complete career change, there are a lot more things to take into consideration. You might need additional training. You will need additional training, I will say. Additional education in some way. It requires more planning for you. It requires a longer timeline. So you have to be okay with it just taking longer for you to make the switch. And it's a higher risk in some cases, not always, especially if you're going to a more in-demand career. The high risk comes with, are you going to like it? So there has to be a little bit of research done before we make a big switch like that. So if you are somebody thinking about this, what makes the most sense for you of the 4 types that I went through? Is it going to be a functional change, an industry change, a structural change, or a complete and utter, I'm blowing up my career to do something new change? Let's talk transferable skills. You are never, ever, ever starting from zero when you make a career change, even if you're doing the complete overhaul. So many professionals make this mistake because they assume that they have to start at the bottom. They assume that they have to just go back to an entry-level position. And some of you want to do that, and that's fine. In most cases, you do not have to do that if you make the transition the right way. And that's very unique. So I can't, answer that for you unless you come and talk to me about it. So what are some common transferable skills that I see with my clients and I've seen across the board? Communication is number one, always communication. Leadership, especially if you've held a leadership position, if you're a little bit farther into your career, those skills are going to transfer immediately. Problem solving. This is a huge one. So many hiring managers want a problem solver, and that is going to happen across industries and across functions. The ability to build relationships. This is hit or miss depending on, your function, but if you can build relationships in one industry, you can build it in another. Project management, whether you're formally in a project management position or not, just the idea of managing yourself and your work is what we're talking about here. And that is going to transfer even if it's in a completely different space. Strategic thinking, if that is a skill that you want and have, that is going to transfer always. And then influence in terms of if you understand how to build influence, which after this entire season, you better know how to build influence, that is going to transfer over into the new field. And in a lot of ways, you have a chance to start over. And so if you've done that before, you're going to be able to do it again because you have a track record of being able to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have a gap in skills. Some of you will have a major gap in skills. One of the examples I gave was the accountant to the therapist. You know, on paper, you might think, oh, that doesn't make sense. An accountant works with the numbers. Well, accountants work with people too. A lot. I know the conversations I have with my accountant, you know, they know a lot about me. They know about our lifestyle. They help us make decisions, like all of that. So you might think, oh, yes, they work with numbers predominantly, but they also have a lot of conversations with people. And so that jump from accountant to therapist might seem a little crazy wild, but it actually might make more sense depending on who you are as a person and what type of accountant you were. So those are the types of things that we have to think about. Because if you're being drawn to a certain career path, you're being drawn to it for a reason. And so you have to lean into that in terms of the transferable skills, right? So if you had to explain your transferable skills right now, could you do it? So take a little bit of time, think about that. Think about what you have been doing that could easily convert into another function or another industry or another career completely. And I think that also helps build confidence anytime we want to make a change because we realize what we are bringing to the table. This is a harder part of this conversation because it's going to hold people back. So, a good career change at the wrong time is going to create so many challenges that have nothing to do with you, that have nothing to do with your capabilities and your ability to do the job. And I think that that's where a lot of career changes fail because we're not thinking through the realities of what's going on. You hear me talk about realistic reality. This is a section in my book that's so prominent. And we talk about this for a reason, because if we're going to make a change, we have to understand the reality of our situation. So here are the things that I want you to think about. And I've talked about them a lot throughout this season, but they're so important when it comes to making any kind of career change. At the top is going to be financial obligations. You have to understand financially what is going on with you. What do you need? What is the minimum that you can accept? What is your ideal that you can accept? What, along with that is going to be different, perks and health insurance and all those different things. So you have to understand your financial obligations, because if you want to make a really big career change and it's going to cost you $20, $30, $40,000 in salary, you have to be ready for that. So financial obligations is always going to be at the top of this conversation. Next is going to be family responsibilities. And I'm going to give a blanket statement. A lot of people think that this is kids. And I would say, yes, kids is a component of this, but also it could be you are a caregiver for parents or a family member or a child or a spouse. So caregiving falls into this. And as somebody that had an elderly dog with health issues, I would put pets in there as well, because our life for about a year and a half was dictated completely by our dog. And some of you are not going to understand that because you either don't have pets and don't want a pet, or you don't understand the impact that an elderly pet has when they have health issues and you're trying to manage them and keep them comfortable and all of that. So that is definitely something that we take into consideration here. Market conditions. We talked about that in the previous episode. So if you want to know more details about that, check that episode out. I'll try to remember to link it as well. But y- if the market is not good for the field you want to go into, don't go into it. Like you have to understand what is happening in the market. Okay. Similarly, industry demand. What is happening within the industry that you're in and the industry that you're interested in? Is there a demand? Government has always been a safe industry and it has not been safe the last number of years because they've been doing a lot of downsizing. So you have to be aware of that. That's at the federal level. State and local government is probably a little bit different, but you have to understand that for the area that you live in. And then also geographic limitations. So, this is something I talked about in the last episode about market conditions, but you have to understand if you have a geographical limitation, meaning do you have to stay where you're at, then you only have so many options. So, you can't have a sky's the limit career if you're in a certain area with certain industries and certain functions. So just be very aware of that. We always think that a career change is about us and it's about what we want. And it is to an extent. You're the one that has to live the career, right? You have to live the day to day of the thing that you're doing. So the majority of it is about you. But also, when you have other people in your life that you have to take into consideration, then it also becomes about them. And so, having that realistic reality conversation where you are figuring out, okay, what does this look like? Can I be happy? Are they going to be happy? Sometimes compromises have to be made, and you have to understand what that looks like. And then sometimes it just makes the decision take a little bit longer because we have to have some conversations and we have to understand where we're going and what we're doing. And is it all going to work? And is it all going to align? So for you, I want you to think about if you are getting ready to make a change, have you had some of these conversations? Have you thought about all of these different things when it comes to the career change? When you understand that, you will be more confident and more able to make a more informed decision. Career change can become really risky because we don't know what's going on. We don't know how we're going to react. We don't know if we're going to like the new industry. This is especially prominent if you are making a big shift. And I would say a big shift would be you're switching functions or you're changing careers 100%. Um, you have to test the waters. There has to be a significant amount of exploration that happens. And I know some of you are like, no, I'm just going to make it. I feel I'm just going to make the change. And you lead with your heart. And I love that. I love that for you. And if that's how you live your life, so good. Love that. That's not most people because of what we just talked about, because there are obligations. We have to do a little bit more exploration and a little bit more testing before we get there. So there are a few things that you can do to test the waters. Some are higher risk than others. So first, informational interviews, low risk. Talk to somebody in the field, talk to somebody in the industry, and ask the questions and understand what they do. There's also a lot of videos out there of people talking about their industry, so you don't even have to do formal interviews like that. I think just searching and finding information, there's so much of that out there now that you can search that way as well. Volunteer work. I think this is so underrated. Sometimes you can't do it depending on the field, but if you can, volunteer. Stretch projects. This is going to depend on the organization that you're in and what's available, but if you can, try a stretch project that takes you into the thing that you want to do, or at least connects you to the area that you're interested in. You can do a certification. This takes a little bit more time, effort, and resources. But if it's learning a new skill that's going to allow you to transfer into a new thing, then do the certification, because it's a low risk way for you to really test whether or not it's something you want to do. Freelance work. If you have some of the skills or you've been building some of the skills on the side, try freelancing. You can do that while you're doing your current position. Consulting, same thing. If you have some of these skills, and I'm kind of thinking about this more on if you were doing a complete career switch, but some of you aren't doing a complete career switch. So consulting would be for somebody that wants to stay within the field, but maybe explore different industries. So you can do some consulting for other industries, but in the function that you're in, and vice versa. And then for some of you, depending on your situation, taking some part-time opportunities. I talked about portfolio careers, not in this episode, I think in the last episode. Maybe it was this one. I don't remember. But portfolio career where you take some different part-time opportunities to try some things out and see what you want, or you take some temp positions to see if it's something that works for you. All right. Obviously, there are risks to some of these, so you have to gauge that for yourself. There's always a risk in leaving the thing that you have been doing that you're comfortable with. In a different market, I might say, yeah, go explore, go do all of this. And you can always go back. You can't always go back. So you have to figure that out for yourself based on what you're comfortable with and your level of risk. What I will say is the more information that you have, the easier it is for you to make an informed decision. In the beginning, I said something that I hope rattled some of you, but is so important to this discussion. Is this a career change, or are you trying to escape something? I think that so many of us have been in scenarios where we are trying to escape. And I know I was there at one point in my career, and I wasn't trying to escape the work that I was doing. I was trying to escape myself. I was grieving. I was going through a lot personally, and my job overwhelmed me. And I had to just make a big change, and I did, only to come back, only to come back to it, because it was never about the job, and it was never about the work that I was doing. It was about me, and it was about the situation that I was in and the healing that I needed to do in order to do this work well again. So those of you who are in this situation, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to talk to somebody. It can be a coach like me. I can have some of these conversations to an extent. Some of you need to talk to a therapist or a counselor, and that's okay. But you have to figure this out, because if you are escaping something, you are not going to escape it by making a change. So you have to know that the change that you are making is the right change, because you're in the right headspace to make the change. So a lot of people think, I want a new career. I want to blow everything up. I want something new. Most of the time, they want one of 5 things. They need a new manager. That's usually at the top of the list. They need a healthier culture. This is more common than people want to admit, because a lot of times they like the work that they do, but the culture is not a good fit. And so they have a hard time with that. You need better boundaries. Specifically with work. You need better boundaries with work, and that is a you thing that you have to figure out for yourself. You need different leadership. So not direct management, but the higher level leadership. If you don't agree and if they're not communicating, this is especially prominent in some small mid-sized organizations, but you just might not align with the leadership and you need to get out for that reason. I had that issue a couple of times. Sometimes you just need a different company. You love the work that you're doing. You might even like the industry that you're in, but you just need a different company because the company that you're in just it's not working for you anymore, or there's nothing there for you, and that's okay. Before you make any career change, especially a major one, it's going to help you to understand what you're actually trying to solve. And it's usually one of those 5 things. So make sure that you are having those conversations, because if you're not having those conversations and you switch, whether it's a small switch or a bigger switch, you're going to carry that with you into the next position. So you have to be realistic about what is going on. When people think about changing careers, they often focus on everything that they've already invested into that career. And they don't want to make the change, right? That's totally understandable. If you have spent 10 or 15 years building out an expertise in a specific field, making that type of change, that's so hard. You're walking away from everything that you know, and it feels like you're letting it all go. But as I have said, very few people are going to completely start over. Your experience is going to show up in a new field, in a new position over and over and over again, even if the position looks completely different on paper. If you have spent years leading people, you're not going to just lose that because you've changed industries. Now, you might not be able to go into a leadership position right away if you switch enough things around, but it doesn't mean you can't get back there, and your previous leadership experience is going to get acknowledged. If you were a strong communicator in your current position, in your current field, that's not going to go away. You are still going to be a strong communicator. You just have to learn a new language in some cases. So before you make any kind of major change, it's worth taking a look at what isn't working. Some of you have genuinely outgrown the profession and you just don't want to do it anymore. But a lot of you are reacting to burnout or a difficult work environment, or just a role that doesn't fit you anymore. You're not challenged by it. And you have to understand that difference before you move forward. And spending time identifying this issue is not going to guarantee that you make the perfect decision, right? We don't always make the perfect decision right away, but it makes it easier to evaluate these opportunities and decide what kind of change is going to get you closer to the type of career and the type of life that you want. So throughout this season, we have talked about skills and reputation and influence and relationships and career choices and staying connected and understanding the market that we are in. And all of those things help you create leverage. And leverage is not going to just disappear because you decide to make a change. In many cases, it's what makes the change possible in the first place. All right, that is a wrap on season 13. And moving forward with the podcast, we are going to be making some pretty big and much needed changes. So stay tuned for that. I don't want to give anything away just yet, but we've got some big, exciting changes that I think are going to make it even more fun to listen to this podcast. So I'm excited. Thank you so much for being here, listening, supporting. If you're not already following me on whatever podcast platform you're on or on YouTube, please do that so that you can see when new episodes and videos are released. And I'll see you next time. And remember, you control your career.